good? Yeah, let me rotate the center a little bit. This is about as high as it goes, yeah.
Welcome. Thank you guys very much for coming out. This is a pretty important meeting. I know it takes a lot out of your day and your evening, but we've got a lot of good information we're going to cover. And I'd like to ask Commissioner Bizzani to introduce us. Or start us off for a little bit.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, friends, neighbors, fellow Orfano County citizens. I wish this could be under better circumstances. We don't want to scare you. We don't want to frighten anybody, but we do want you to be aware of the potential for catastrophic flooding, both in the town of Levita and the city of Walsenburg. So tonight we have a number of experts. We're going to show you some video clips, and hopefully you go away from this with an awareness of the potential dangers that at least those of us who live in the floodplain area might experience. So, as the guy from the National Weather Service says, whatever you knew about flooding pre-fire, forget about it. You will understand when this is done tonight that this is a whole new ballgame, and we likely will have some flooding. I don't know how much. Depends on the vagaries of nature as to what kind of floods we'll get and when. But we likely will be facing this situation for a number of years. So be patient. We're doing everything we can to make sure you're safe, that you understand what to do if we do have an event. So I'll stop there, and there'll be plenty of time for questions, I believe, later in the program. And so save your questions and pay attention. Thank you.
Next, I'd like to ask Mayor Hoyt to come up and say a few words.
on, he said you're going to hear from some experts tonight. I ain't one of them. My expertise, I have an extensive background with Red Cross. I know about mass care, sheltering, and feeding. That's not going to be the focus of this meeting. This is some things that we do need to have you know what kind of a turnout we're going to get. When I drove up here, I was delighted to see a block-long line, folks trying to get in here. I mean, we have a lot of folks who care. So I know you'll have a lot of questions. We'll have time at the end. But here's some information that I hope you take away from tonight's meeting. It's sort of like the old preacher that says, first I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, then I'm going to tell it to you. So I'm going to tell you what you're going to be hearing tonight and to have a clear idea how severe the flooding can be here in this community. In this flood, all the maps that we're looking at tell us the water is, even in the worst case scenario, is probably going to go north up to the railroad tracks. But the whole town is going to be affected one way or another. So whether you have water coming in your front door or you are being a flood buddy and helping people who live on this side of town have a place to stay, we're all going to be affected. The next thing I want you to walk away from here, and you'll have detailed information, that the National Weather Service is going to be an important partner in what we're doing, and they will talk to you about how to stay alert to their warnings and how that works. Public health services for the county will also have an important role, whether it's pre-flood and offering tetanus shots or other kind of vaccines that you need, to helping you understand what you need to do once you get to go home, what things you need to be alert for. Somebody from San Isabel is going to be here and talk to us about our electrical service, what that may look like in the flood. Sheriff Newman is going to talk to us about what role law enforcement's going to have in any event that we have. And we want you to know that the Office of Emergency Services for the county here can help you get tips on how to be prepared for this. We have a great partner with the mayor in Levita. He knows water like nobody else in the county. And he's going to talk to us about actually how dangerous floodwaters can be to us. Some folks from Public Works for the city of Walsenburg will talk to us about what to expect from our city utilities, what the concerns are going to be. And someone from the county will talk to you a little bit about what we're doing to mitigate the flood danger in terms of cleaning out the river and what that means for us, and what roles there may be in some volunteer, if you want to volunteer to help with that. And finally, we'll talk just a little bit about what evacuation is going to look like here. That's still a work in progress, and I think it warrants another complete meeting exactly like what we're having here tonight, but with a lot of detail that we haven't fleshed out yet. So this is a part of the planning and work are our key communicators in the community. I know from my background in education, lots of things, but nothing beats neighbors talking to neighbors and you folks helping each other out. Part of the code of the West, where we learned government's not going to be able to completely solve all of our issues in this. It's individuals and neighbors coming together to help each other. And if nothing else, take away from here, I want you to understand, start thinking about making a kit, the things that you need to make sure aren't lost in a flood, whether it's important documents, family heirlooms, some things you want to take with you if you have to evacuate in a hurry. Make a plan on what you're going to do, and then practice it. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to who's next here, John? I guess John is.
So I'm going to show you a couple of videos of what a 10-year event is going to look like in all likelihood. This has been modeled. We've hired some engineers to come down and do some work for us. And modeling the flood's potential is one of the things they're doing. So this is a 10-year event that you're going to see, but this is essentially the same as a historic 100-year event would have been. Is that accurate? Give me a little help. And this is north of Beta Creek. So this is north of Beta Creek that is just west of Navajo on Highway 160 where you go down. This comes directly into Walsenburg without going through any of the gauge stations that are going in above Levita. This does not go through Levita. And then next one. That was the west end of town. That's Bear Creek Bridge. That's the railroad bridge right here. I think this is Ysidro. No, I'm sorry. This is Main Street over here. This is the community center right here. It's just, quite a bit of town is going to be underwater there. You got one more video? That's it? Okay, so that is not worst case scenario. That is not worst case scenario. That was the 10-year event, or they call it the 10% event instead of a 10-year. So there's 10% chance of that happening every year. So I would ask Jennifer Stark and Greg Evener to come up from National Weather Service. Here you are.
Thank you. So good evening all. My name is Greg Hevener. I'm the Award and Coordination Meteorologist for our office in Pueblo. Basically my job is to help communities prepare for disasters such as this, possibly in Walsenburg, also in the town of Levita. And my boss, Jennifer Stark, here is accommodating me as well. So we're going to go through a little bit about what we do at the Weather Service in Pueblo and kind of how you can prepare for potential 1, 10, 100-year flood in the city of Walsenburg. So let's quickly run through. So there are 122 forecast offices across the country. Each one does the exact same thing, issues watches, warnings for thunderstorms, tornadoes, flash floods, whatever it might be. And within those subset of 122 offices, also have river forecast centers that look at monitor the big river basins such as the Rio Grande, Arkansas River, and so on and so forth. And if you break it down, this is the area that we cover. We cover the 21 southern counties in southern Colorado. And again, we issue all the forecasts, watches, warnings for those counties and the locations. Our staffing profile, so we have about 23 individuals on station. Of the 23, 16 are degreed meteorologists having a 4-year degree, sometimes even a master's and PhD. So very well versed. Some of them have many years experience forecasting here in southern Colorado, 15, possibly even 30 years of forecasting experience, so a pretty good breadth of experience. And we're constantly monitoring the weather every day, every second of the year. So we run a 24-hour operations in our office in Pueblo. We run 3 different shifts with at least 2 forecasters on in each given shift, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., 4 to midnight, midnight to 8. So, we're constantly monitoring everything and issuing the appropriate watches, warnings to give you enough heads up to get to safety at all costs. So our Doppler weather radar, which will show, has really good coverage of majority of the burn scar in the Wolfenbüttel County side. So you're going to see a lot of information on our radar pertaining to the burn scar across the area. But basically, in any given hour, the radar itself is only working about 7.5 seconds. So the other 59.5, or 59 minutes and 52 seconds, basically it's listening for energy pumping back from showers, thunderstorms, whether it's heavy rain, hail, whatever it might be. So here's a depiction in terms of what our radar looks like for the city of Walsenburg. So when the beam of the radar goes out, because the Earth's curved, the beam basically gains in height the farther you get from the radar itself. So the lowest elevation we can see of the city of Walsenburg is about 4,300 feet above the ground. And most of the burn scars between 3,500 to 6,000 feet elevation-wise. So we have really good coverage. We can see a lot of the heavy rain-producing storms that possibly could produce flash flooding in Levita as well as Walsenburg. Now, as far as flooding facts go, only about 6 inches of rapidly moving water can take you off of your feet. And about 2 feet of that rapidly running water can sweep your car away downstream. And when your car is off the road, you're at the mercy of that current of the water. So wherever it's going to take you is where you're going to end up. As mentioned before, flooding from the burn scar is a very serious and real threat. Whatever you knew about flooding prior to the fire doesn't apply anymore at all. The hydrology of the burn scar and of the mountain have changed drastically. We expect, much like all of our high-impact burn scars, to have effects for about 5, if not 10 years. So we can be going through the same situation in the next almost decade with these heavy rain events possibly impacting Levita and Walsenburg at the same time. Now, that being said, mentioned north of Beta Creek, there are parts of the burn scar that could be affected by heavy rain that don't necessarily affect Levita at all. So rather than using Levita as a gauge for when you actually should go into place when you get the first flash flood warning, you might only get one warning. You only have like maybe an hour or 2 before that water actually hits the town of Walsenburg. So again, you can't use Levita and the flooding there as a precursor for what's expected in Walsenburg. It could completely bypass Levita altogether. So I'm going to show you a picture in terms of how here. So we have the spring burn scar north of Highway 160, south of 160, and then on the Castilla County side. And here's an image of what that looks like. This way we can add more detail. We add more detail into the warnings with affected basins or creeks that possibly could affect, again, Levita and or Walsenburg. So again, this is how we plan to operate for the foreseeable future for any heavy rainfall that happens this spring and summer across the area. So again, Levita could be completely bypassed. You may only get that one warning if the water begins to funnel into north of Beta Creek. So how exactly are you going to receive the warning? Anywhere you get what we call like a hyper-local ways to receive weather information. Whether it's weather radio, there's a transmitter over here in Walsenburg. They continuously operate. It's a special set-top or even a handheld device that will automatically receive the watches or warnings for, say, flash floods, tornadoes, severe thunderstorms, whatever it might be, and it'll alert you to wake up in the middle of the night. And the good thing about it, again, is it's continuous. It has a battery backup, so if you ever lose commercial power to that transmitter site, you'll actually receive information still that way. So here's the call sign for the Walsenburg transmitter, also the frequency which it's transmitting on. Now, the wireless emergency alerts, they come turned on your phones on automatically. Some carriers don't actually have these. Most do. you can turn these off. It basically works the same way as the Amber Alerts. But basically, we issue them they come across on your phones for tornado warnings and flash flood warnings for our location. So again, this will be a text sent to your phone. If your phone is pinged within a tower, within that warning, you'll get this as long as your carrier allows the wireless emergency alerts to be turned on and you don't have it defaulted off on your phones. Interesting. And then also a lot of local TV stations too, big events, they'll break in live coverage. They're regulated by the FCC to provide life-saving information. So again, a big event such as a big flood, they'll be breaking in live with coverage on their airwaves. The Red Cross and FEMA also have other apps for your smartphones to send you information when it hits. So again, if a flash flood warning is issued for north of Beta into the city of Walsenburg, and you have Walsenburg set as your location, it'll automatically populate or pull up an image on your phone and show you where that warning is, and it'll basically alert you to it. And that's all I have for now. So thank you all for coming out tonight. And Jennifer wanted to add a few questions or a few comments as well.
Okay, thanks. Are we okay on time? Okay. So a couple of things. Greg mentioned our wonderful meteorologists in the office. We also have a service hydrologist, Tony Anderson. He's been heavily involved in the planning meetings and the mitigation meetings and whatever else we can get our hands on. I asked for a hydrologist in our office following the Waldo Canyon wildfire and the subsequent flooding on that burn scar. So burn scars are not new territory for our office at issuing warnings for them. It is something that we take very seriously, and we may issue a warning that does not result in a flash flood, and it would be a false alarm. And you may be saying, okay, they don't know what they're talking about. But it's because we're being extremely proactive, because when rain, and particularly very heavy rainfall rates, fall on a burn scar, the soils cannot absorb any of that rainfall. It all runs off, and it runs off very quickly. So what we're trying to do is give you warning with just minutes of lead time to put your plan in place, take action to protect yourself and your family. So it may seem like it's a false alarm, and I apologize in advance for that, but we're going to be very proactive. Each burn scar, we learn about how the soils react, which creeks, which drainages are going to be reactionary to that heavy rainfall. And as we learn more, we can adjust our plan. And we've done that with Waldo. Waldo has recovered a little bit with time, and we will adjust our rainfall threshold upwards and try and avoid having as many false alarms. But especially this first year, we had several events last year, but this first year we're going to be really proactive and very careful and cautionary. So just consider it a practice run for one of the big events that may happen. One of the things about our radar, and I will mention this, almost every weather radar app that you see, if it's on your phone, if it's on your computer, if it's on the TV stations, all of that is National Weather Service Doppler radar. It may be overlaid on different map backgrounds, things like that, but we're using that radar information as our warning criteria. The radar is pretty sophisticated. We go to, well, in the early days, we went to 4 weeks of training in how to evaluate and interpret that radar data. And what you're seeing on TV screens and pretty much on computers and apps is just the half-degree elevation slice of that radar, but that radar scans all the way up in thunderstorms. And when we're looking up at the top of those thunderstorms, it can give us a lot more information. So we're doing that 24/7. Greg mentioned that we have 2 people on duty all the time. When we have severe weather and flooding on burn scars, we call in extra people. Greg may be sitting in front of the radar screen. I may be out there. We may have people that we've called in on overtime. So it's a huge priority for us. With the radar, there are some things that can skew the precipitation estimates. Hail in particular, and we know that here in Colorado we get a lot of hail. It can overestimate how much rain is falling from those thunderstorms. So that may be one of the times where we don't get as much rain on the burn scar because we've had hail contamination. But again, if we don't issue the warning based on the radar and what it's telling us, you may not get the lead time that you need to take action. And the final thing I wanted to say is most flood deaths across the country, and there are a lot, happen when people are in their vehicles. So don't try to get in your car and outrun rising floodwaters. Your best bet may be
Rob. So I think we're going to just move right on. Eddie Smith from San Isabel's got some words of wisdom for you for electrical.
I got words, I don't know about wisdom. Wow, there's a lot of people in here. So, the first question that we get asked from San Isabel Electric is, when the flood comes, are we going to shut the power off? No, we're not. We have protection out there on our lines, and if there is happen to be a fault, which a fault occurs when a power line goes down to the ground or lightning hits it or whatever, it will shut off automatically. Then we will go out and we will patrol those lines to make sure they're safe to energize back, and we will turn them lines back on. You do need to be prepared possibly for a prolonged outage. As you've seen the flood map, it could wash out our poles, it could wash out our underground, and it will take time to get that back up and running. We're doing everything in our power to try to prevent some of this stuff. As you know, everybody inside Walsenburg has seen us around in your communities. We have 2 crews here, contractor crews in the town right now, rebuilding this town as fast as we can. We are going to be out of the 100-year floodplain with our rebuild before May 1st. That is a good thing. So we are going to get out of there. So we're trying to get as much as our stuff done inside this town as we can. Just a few precautionary measures. If you're driving around and you see a power line or a pole that has been washed out, it's laying towards the ground, stay away from the wires. Don't get near them, don't touch them. You can call them in. A lot of people, when the power goes out, the first thing they want to do is hook up their generator. You need to use extreme caution, as water and generators don't mix. Electricity and water just does not mix. So use extreme caution on your generators. If you walk back into your house and there's a foot of water standing inside your house, it's advised that you don't walk up to your electric panel and try and grab that electric panel. It wouldn't be, it's not a good thing. And then the last thing is that I'd like to go over real quick is just, you got to know that if the power goes out, we're setting ourselves up in a way to get it restored as fast as we can. And by that, we are stockpiling materials inside our yard right over here in our Bear Creek yard. We've ordered materials to get it up as soon as we can. We have contractor crews at our disposal that we can call in at a moment's notice. And plus we have 8 men that work out of this Walsenburg area, and we also have other crews in Pueblo West and Trinidad, and they would be responding instantly. You need to know that San Isabel Electric, inside this community, we are a part of your community. Our families live here, our workers live here, and we're just a part of your lives. So we're going to do everything it can, and we're going to get through this. It's going to go through, just like when the fire hit and I stood up and said, we're just going to have to go through this together. And that's what we're going to do. San Isabel's going to help you through it. So thank you.
All right, Sheriff Newman, if you'd come up and talk a little bit about the response.
Well, we've been preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. I don't know if you've seen our new big truck we have sitting in front of the office. That's part of the preparation. It's got a deep fording ability. As soon as we get warnings that there may be a possible flood, we're going to start activating our officers. We'll be running up and down the flood area trying to help warn people. If you get that warning, please heed it and leave. It takes a while for me to get assistance. Best case scenario, I may have 15 or 16 deputies out there, but we're also responsible for taking care of the rest of the county, Gardner, anything else that comes up. So we're gonna be limited on our manpower. We will be requesting some. It may be as quick as a half hour away and as long as an hour and a half or even a couple days away. If the flood comes and you get evacuated from your houses, it'll probably be a while before you're allowed back in until it's safe. During that time, we'll have deputies patrolling to make sure that there is no looting and stealing and stuff like that. We're gonna do everything we can to help, but once that wall of water comes down, excuse the pun, but we're dead in the water too. If you can't get out, we can't get in, and I don't know of any equipment that will make it through there if the 2-3 feet of water come down, or even worse. We will keep on preparing. We're gonna collect all the equipment we can. We've got some generators, and we will be out doing everything we can to help everybody we can. That's all.
Okay, I'm going to ask Larry Sanders, the county's emergency manager, to come up and talk to you about some of the things that you can do to be prepared for this.
Thank you, John. So if you can go to the next slide, or we have a button there. Awesome. There we go. So I've heard a lot through the last several months about it's never going to flood here, it never can happen. It already has. This is Main Street, Walsenburg. Different dates on this. I think 1907's right. I saw a date of 27. A couple guys in a rowboat out there. There was no burn scar. This happened with just regular flooding. What happens with a burn scar, where you have the bad burn, you get about 15 times more water and debris coming off of it than in this kind of a scenario. So these estimates are real. Please take them seriously. And then last summer we had some flooding in Dog Spring. Had a little bit of burn scar part in it, and this is a picture somebody captured while it was raining. This was a tiny amount of rain. In Indian Creek, we lost the road with 3/10 of an inch of rain. Middle Creek, County Road 442 was wiped out with 5/10 of an inch of rain in Middle Creek and South Middle Creek area, only part of the basins. Pass Creek was wiped out again and again. We didn't have any water flowing in any of the streams last year. Everything was dry. We were in a major drought. This year, you can tell it's the opposite. We're way ahead of the game. We got a lot of snowpack, so things can happen. I wish I was wrong, but and when I'm warning you, it's not if it's going to flood, it's not even when it's going to flood, it's how many times and where. We had 13 warnings last year from the National Weather Service, primary warnings, flash flood warnings, and 5 follow-up. It flooded somewhere in every single one of those, and they tell me that scares them. They're really happy with a 50% success rate. This is the 2013 flooding, and some of the damages that happened to roadways up there are pretty amazing. Very quickly, they can be overwhelmed. And as we were heard earlier, turn around, don't drown. Cars can float. I've heard even 1 foot of water, a small car can be swept off its feet. A gentleman up in Manitou Springs stepped out into 4 inches of water on a roadway and was swept off to his death in the flooding in Manitou Springs. But they only float for a little while, and then there's a problem. And cars and buildings and things like that are overwhelmed. Everything you've ever seen in Hollywood about flooding, you know, Mississippi River flooding, those kind of things, the Cajun Navy, forget all of that. You're talking about a massive dirty wall that's sort of like a moving wall of concrete with rocks and trees and cars and propane tanks and houses, and it's moving fast. And nobody try to be a hero. You jump in that kind of stuff to save somebody else, and you're dead. Here's somebody that the flooding up in the New England area that happened in that hurricane that kept going north. This was a truck that didn't heed the warning. The driver was killed. It hardly even looks like this was a truck anymore. That's the power of water. And of course, your homes are no more safe if you're down in the deep stuff. Walsenburg, thankfully, will be a little bit slower, most likely, a little bit less destructive, but don't underestimate it. It'll still be extreme. You might have a little more time than Levita. Don't think you have very much time. Be ready to go when you get the warning and get to high ground. This was 2013 up near Evans. The power of the flooding that was up in the mountains got out into Evans and flooded things out there. So don't think just because you're far away from the mountains, you're safe. This roadway, I watched a video of this and took a couple pictures off of it. This is the Big Thompson Canyon, and within about 30 minutes, the water down where it isn't even up higher, and later it got higher, it completely wipes out this road. And this is Manitou Springs. This is a storm sewer. So one of the things, and I think Mayor Burgach will tell us a little more about that, but storm sewers and real sewer lines can become pressurized with a fractured line and can cause flooding in places you don't really expect. So what can you do? Well, one thing, don't be in denial. The experts tell us that 90% of Americans live in this thing called a normalcy bias, where we just think everything's great, and we tend to deny problems until it's too late, or we wait. We believe they're real, but we wait too long. Make up your mind now to get ready and to have a plan for yourself. One of the things you should do, buy flood insurance. If you're in any of these maps that are going around, and we'll make them more public and on the website, if there's a chance waters and debris is going to get there, buy flood insurance. If a lot of people think the government's going to come along and make you whole, right? FEMA will come in, they always rescue you. It takes at least 300 primary residents, and when they do, the average award is less than $4,000. If you don't have flood insurance, nobody's going to be able to make you whole. And it does happen. This was out of the 2013 flood as well. Another thing you want to do is make a plan for yourself. Where's your family going to go? How are you going to rally? If you have a business, what are you going to do? Is your important data backed up? Each person needs to have a plan. We keep talking evacuation, but we really may not have time in every case to evacuate, and it isn't an evacuation like it was in the fire. It means get out now before the roar. So how are you going to hear about some things? We have the National Weather Service here. They're one of two 24/7 alert and warning notification agencies that we have. There are different ways to get into that notification. Get the phone apps or buy a weather radio. We also have Code Red. The Sheriff's Office and Dispatch are as the other 24/7 agency. If you're not signed up for Code Red, call Dispatch, have them sign you up. That way they can mark you correctly to where you're at so you'll get the proper warnings. We're breaking up zones based on where people live so they get the correct warning at the correct time as soon as possible. Decide now how you're going to shelter. If you wait too late, you may not have a good place. And as Sheriff mentioned, if you're there and in trouble, nobody's coming to get you because they're going to die if they try. You have to wait till the waters subside. And if it's nighttime, that usually means the next morning too. You also want to consider specific needs for your household. You're going to be different than everybody else. And that might be your extended family too. You might need to be the flood buddy for somebody else that you know. Mayor mentioned we don't have a lot of resources with the government down here. So you need to be ready and you need to help one another. That's the Code of the West that the county has on the website. You're ready to protect yourself and you're ready to help your neighbors. Think about children, think about less abled folks, other people who might need help. Then there's websites online. If you go to ready.gov and then just look for that, make a plan. You don't even have to write that down. Just remember ready.gov. There's all kinds of stuff there. You want to make a plan. You want to have a go-stay bag. You want to have food and water and medicine and things to last for a minimum of 3 days. But I would recommend 5 to 10 because you might be feeding somebody else. There's a number for Code Red Dispatch. If you want to sign up for that, 738-1044. They're ready to help you. The weather radio they're talking about, the one you really want to look for is something called a same weather radio. You can get it as your alarm clock. Make sure it has battery backups. It'll click off automatically if you get a warning and it'll wake you up. It'll notify you. You can go to the big box retailers, you can go into Amazon or online, you can find them everywhere. There's all kinds of different models, and they're all pretty good, and the National Weather Service can help you set them up. If you have any questions or concerns about that radio, call them. There's some information there. We have this stuff on documentation at the county level. You might have got it coming in at the desk. If you don't have it or need it, let us know. We can get that to you. And then another notification that you'll have, and this is going to be respective to the town of Levita and the city of Walsenburg, they will have sirens on their own, and they will activate those. If you hear that siren, get out now. That doesn't mean you have any time or anything. It means your life is in danger. Here's something that's important to understand. The bigger the event, the faster this water is going to flow. And not only is it going to flow faster if it's a big event, it's going to go faster as we start doing more and more mitigation. We're doing clearing and snagging operations up and down the river, getting rid of a lot of debris and different things. Once that's gone, the water is going to start going faster. It's going to start cutting deeper. The really good part of that is it's going to absorb, increase the amount of water that channel can absorb before it gets out of the banks. But it's also going to increase the speed with which it gets downstream. In Walsenburg, the experts are telling me that we could have as little as 2.5 hours warning for water that comes down through Levita. So when Levita's in trouble, you may have as little as 2.5 hours. And it all depends. The bigger it is, the faster it goes. And as they pointed out earlier, if it comes down north of Beta and Santa Roya from the north, you're not going to have Levita as a signal. So listen to the siren. This is what's another thing that's important to understand when it comes to alert and warnings. There are several layers of this that have to be considered, and they're all additive or cumulative. Over on the left side here, we have people that are looking at this information and deciding we need to issue this warning, we need to turn on this or have. Then when you get a message sent out, it's going to take some time for that message to be disseminated. That if you're using a phone app or you're getting a call from a code red, if you don't answer that phone and you have to wait and look at the text message, the time you spent is time you no longer have. And then over on the right is how long it takes the average person to initiate their action. The experts tell us across the country in disasters that the average person, when everything's done right, when they understand and they know, still wait 180 minutes or 3 hours. We don't have 3 hours, do we? You need to be ready to go. You want to have your go stay bag packed. You want to have it in place. You might even want to have your car parked backwards in, just like the cops do when they're getting ready to go someplace. Depending on where you're at, have it ready to move fast. This is also at that ready.gov site. We have documentation in paper available. Build a go stay bag and put things in there. Don't forget about prescription medicines, glasses, things that you might need that other people don't necessarily need, but you have to have. If you have pets, think about pet food and water for your pets. You have babies or infants, think about their needs. Make sure you have that taken care of. Big one, think about all your important family documents, birth certificates, passports, things that you might have that you can't replace, that you need in an emergency. Have them stored in a safe place or have them with you in that go stay bag and take them with you. You might want to tie down your propane tanks. There's common kits available that are around in the hardware stores. There's videos online at FEMA how to do it. Very simple. They will float away. The mayor was joking the other day about how there's going to be 700 propane tanks down here in Walsenburg after the floodwaters hit Levita. And of course, it's not a joke. That's the truth. If they're not tied down, they will float away. Think about anything you have that might be hazardous that is going to go down. Rob wasn't here from public health, but when you have floods, there's a ton of hazardous stuff. The waters themselves are contaminated. There could be bodies in there. There might be wild animals that come into your house when you come back. There's all kinds of hazards. The more of this stuff you can get out before you leave, the better it is for everybody else. If you got junk that you don't need anymore, oil, bad things, get rid of it now. Family Smithsonian folks to help you out, try to figure out how to restore them. Get them stored in your buddy's house or somewhere on high ground now. They're not replaceable, so don't lose them. And again, like I mentioned, the documents, your passports, your things, anything that can float will float, and a lot of things you don't think can float will float, like those big concrete Jersey barriers and things, they float in a flood. Think about yourself, your neighbors, make that plan today, decide to act on it. Don't get caught in that denial or that delay mode, thinking at the moment you're hearing the roar, what do I do now? Have it already planned out, then it'll be easy to act. And not only do you want to visit ready.gov, but one last site, this is going to be continually updated. This is the county's information site, fire.werfeno.us. Visit that site, there's good information there, and if we don't have the answer and there's something else, we can add it. It'll be updated all the time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'd like to ask, we're fortunate we have one of the county's water commissioners is also the mayor of Levita, and he's taken time away from Levita to come and speak to Walsenburg. So, Mayor Burgosh.
Thank you for asking me to come this evening. You know, I think everybody's maybe wondering here, how do we get here? And I think maybe a little background information on the spring fire is key to this. It's not just because we had a fire that it causes this flood potential. It's because the severity of the fire. This fire was one of the most intense and hot fires that the Forest Service has seen in this generation. There's an assessment team called the Bear Assessment Team. It's burn area estimation, something that the Forest Service sends in. And I had the opportunity to talk to them at length. They came here fresh off the campfire, which was in Northern California last summer. And the campfire burned about 400,000 acres in California. And it had a burn intensity of about 22 to 25%. So they calculate the severely burned area, 400 times 22 is about 80,000 acres of severely burned. Severe burned ground is a very high indicator. What happens when you have a really hot fire is the ground almost turns to cement. And it then starts rejecting water. And it'll reject water for a period of years until it starts to work all that out of it. And the way it works it out is through repeated freezing, snow, and so forth. But the campfire, so we have 80,000 acres of severely burned area in a 400,000 acre fire stretched along 130 miles of frontage. The spring fire had 68% severe burned. So we take 108,000 acres times 68%, and we get about 80,000 acres of severely burned ground in 13 miles of frontage. So we have this exponential increase in the amount of water that's going to be shed off of our hills and out of our forest and the uplands, and the only place it's going to go is into our rivers and into our channels. And you know, that bodes not well for the town of Levita and the city of Walsenburg. We're both going to be in the same boat. I'm sure many of you have seen some of the diagrams that we've shown, and it was published in the paper and so forth about peak flows. You know, flash floods are fast, intense, and the water leaves quickly. The damage stays for a long time. We're looking at the town of Levita, peak flow of about 61,000 cubic feet per second. If you've ever been over at the Colorado River, think the Colorado River in flood stage times 3. And that's where Levita is. You say, okay, well, we're downstream in Walsenburg. Well, it's got to spread out. Well, latest studies, I'm just reading a study out of Australia, and said that attenuation or that lowering of the peak isn't as much as anybody thinks. And so now we're kind of thinking that Walsenburg, Levita's going to be at 61,000. Walsenburg's probably going to be in that 50,000 cubic feet peak. That's huge. I'm telling you, I've been state water commissioner for 30 years. I've never seen 50,000 feet of flow in any stream, anywhere, except maybe the Mississippi River. We're looking at some in huge amounts. We're looking at them hitting quickly. Mr. Sanders he has not given you ill advice when he says that it will get here, and it'll get here quickly, and the force of it will be tremendous. Water that's flowing 3 feet per second, that's the speed that a person walks. If it's knee deep, you will not be able to stand up in it. It will sweep you off your feet, and it'll take everything else with it. So we're going to have this a tremendous amount of flow in our channels. We're going to, I'm trying to stay near the mic so you can hear me, but this is Walsenburg. If you look over here, this is a velocity map. So these reds are 15 feet per second. That's what's considered a scouring volume. That's going to carry rock, that's going to wash the banks out, that's going to deepen the channel, and even the blue down there is 2 feet per second. So, you know, if on these edges, you're not going to be able to walk. It's probably going to push cars around and so out of some of our river channels and our streams, particularly the Caceres River. If we start cutting into the bottom, I don't know how many, Mr. Harriman will have to tell you how many city water lines cross the Caceres River and how many city sewer lines cross the Caceres River, but I guarantee it's a bunch. And we may start popping off those, losing the water lines, and if that happens, then there's going to be contamination of the water system. If we start losing the sewer lines, what happens with everybody down gradient, the sewers start to fill with water, and because their sewers are down gradient, the water will run downhill and they start acting like a pressurized water line. So you could be a mile and a half downstream, and because of the pressurization in that sewer line, that sewer is going to come back into your house. So, you know, and we've talked about this, and you know, it's not an illegitimate question to say, what would I rather have, you know, my house flooded or my house full of sewage? Of losing, we lose sewer mains in City of Walsenburg. Think about maybe putting backflow preventers. It's going to cost you $400 or $500 or $600 to put a backflow preventer in on your house for your separate system, but it could save you in the long run. So this, you know, just a lot of these things, try to be prepared. But I can't emphasize enough with you what the speed of the water will do. Now, I will tell you that you probably saw the front page of the paper last week, and it showed a series of these gauging stations we propose to be put in, and they actually, it's a reality. The funding is there. These are planned to be put in by April 15th. These are actually these are specially designed flood level gauges, and we've designed them that they're satellite linked with an Iridium satellite. It's the same satellite system the Department of Defense uses, real-time information, so that excuse me, the warning is going to be instantaneous. These gauging stations have been designed. There's 4 of them that's going above La Vida, but more importantly for the city of Walsenburg, there's one that's going to go east of La Vida, and if you know where the Valley Road is, there's a bridge there called the Harrison Bridge. One will go there, and one will go on the highway on this illustration that Mr. Galusha just showed on north of Beta at 160. So these gauging stations are going to be put in. They're going to be connected. We're going to be able to access them. We plan on having these gauging stations be available for everybody to look at the data coming off of them. And these gauging stations will sit there, and there's actually low-level monitoring, which means they're going to just sit there because Iridium data is real expensive, and it costs a lot of money to shoot the stuff up to the satellite. We're going to install these so that they just are like in an idle mode. So once every hour, they'll ping the satellite saying, you know, I'm still here. You know, don't forget me, I'm still here. And then if we start getting water in the stream, there's a low-level indicator that'll say there's water coming. And interestingly enough, these are going to have a velocity indicator because many times, if there's a little water in there, if the velocity starts increasing, we know there's a flood behind it. And that it may be a half hour later. So we got to, you know, we're buying time. So it'll start saying, oh, there's something happening, and it'll immediately start sending real time continuously to the satellite. And so we can start monitoring that. Then we'll have another level there where if it gets up to another level, which we predetermined as flood stage, but in addition to that, we plan on having all this information on websites. We know that Division of Water Resources will host it, and we're getting probably Warfno County Water Conservancy District will get that information out so that people, you know, we all look at me, you know, I carry one. Virtually everybody carries a cell phone anymore, and they can start monitoring this stuff. They can look at the satellite, the data coming from National Weather Service, and they can say big rainstorms. They look like they're happening up on Levita Pass or up Kachera or something, and they see what we're seeing in real time. You won't get the alarm saying, tell people to get out, but you'll see it coming, and you can use those to self-evacuate. You can use those in saying, you know, I don't think I'll wait for the siren to come. I think we better get out of here now. And you can start buying yourself some time, because what we're looking at is the only thing that's going to save us in these big floods is getting out, and the more time you have to get out, the better you're going to be able to survive a flood. Remember, the flood itself is relatively short-lived. I mean, they're going to come up and it's going to go down right afterwards. That doesn't mean a thing about re-entering. It just means that the water is going to start receding, but it could be 12, 14 days before anybody is allowed back into their house. Yeah, there has to be structural assessments, power assessments, gas assessments, potable water assessments. Is our sewers contaminated? So there's this whole litany of inspections and considerations that have to be done after a flood event. So the water is going, you know, it's like, let's get out of here. And the water is going to recede rather, in most areas, rapidly. It's what's left behind is it's really going to be what we all have to deal with. So I caution everybody, please, you know, don't take this lightly. We wouldn't have, you know, National Weather Service here or any other federal agency here if it wasn't a really, really serious event. And I can tell you, from the top down, federal agencies, Army Corps of Engineers, NOAA, every agency that has something to do with weather, flooding, emergency preparedness, every agency in the state of Colorado that has anything to do with emergency preparedness or any aspect of public safety is here. They're here in droves. We had a meeting earlier today with 20-some individuals from Denver. They don't come down here, you know, just for lunch. You know, they don't. They know that we're really have a problem down here and could, you know, have an exceptional problem. So please stay on your toes, be prepared. I can't emphasize it enough. You know, we'll get through it. It's going to be a different situation. These floods, like up north, 2013, it was a 500-year flood. You know, they could go back and they could rebuild afterwards with some kind of confidence that that flood probably won't occur again in a long time. We've got 10 years to worry about or more where the same prospect could happen time after time after time. So take care of yourself, be patient. I'm there with you, man. Thanks.
For most of us, some of the terminology that we use is a little foreign. I want to give you a little frame of reference that maybe everybody can understand. When we talked about a a cubic foot per second of water coming through. Think of a basketball. One basketball is 1 CFS traveling by you. 2 years ago in the spring, remember how wet it was? Water was at the bottom of the bridge down here on Main Street. That was 1,100 CFS, from what the engineers tell me. Think 30 to 50,000 CFS. So I hope that it helps give you a little more frame of reference than what we might be expecting. Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. And I wanted to ask the City of Walsenburg's Public Works Director, Dave Harriman, to come up and tell you some of the preparations the city's doing. So, Dave, yeah, come up.
David Harriman, Public Works, City of Walsenburg. First, I'd like to tell you that the City of Walsenburg has a great team, and we've been planning for 6 months. 30 days after the fire, Mr. Galusha, everybody called me and said they were going to have a flood, and I was skeptical. You guys said, no, we're not going to have one. But we've been planning for 6 months now, and we have a great team. So we're going to have questions at the end, before I get into the presentation at the end, and we're going to direct the questions to the department heads. So if you have anything in reference to the reservoirs, the water line running from Levita to Walsenburg, and what our water supply is going to be, you'll direct the questions to me. If there's potable water questions, in what water situations are going to be into the city of Walsenburg, that will be directed to Joey Pacheco. Any sanitary sewer plant operations on the sewer will be directed to David Royale. Water department, lines and storage in the city of Walsenburg, those questions will be directed to Chris Beshaver. Sewer department, a backflow preventer, all that kind of stuff, Glenn Hillis. Street maintenance and barricading will be directed to Michael Brennan. Code enforcement, animal control, and parking trailers in Walsenburg from the people in Levita that would like to stay here. We'll waive the ordinance. That'll be Tim Kennedy. And City Hall operations during the flood will be directed to Mark Ellis. So at the end of the program, if you have questions, we're going to direct them to each department so we won't be jumping over each other. So first of all, what I'd like to tell you is what we're doing about preparing for the flood. First of all, we're installing a siren with the coverage that will reach the Northlands. So we purchased the new siren, and we'll follow the protocol for siren. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all the information will be posted on the city website. We have very minimal plans for minimizing the damage because we're not going to be able to control the water. If we put out a barricade, it's going to wash away. So what we're planning on is, prior to the flood, saving as much of the sewer and water line as possible. As you know, Mr. Burgosh says, we have our transmission line that crosses the Caceres River in about 6 different locations, and the sewer line in about 4 different locations. So we know if we have an event, we are going to lose water and sewer. At that point, we do have everything set up to pump water to the water treatment plant to supply water to the city once we're up and running again. We are storing 900 feet of pipe for repairs per month starting last month. So if we have major damage, we have stock on supply. We have contractors within a 90-mile radius to help us after the event. So those are our plans right now. Our major plan for the city of Walsenburg is buddy system. When the flood comes, we do not want everybody in Walsenburg to flee Walsenburg. We want the people on the south side of town to have a buddy on the north side of the town. We are going to have 3 zones. We are going to have a red zone, we are going to have a yellow zone, and we are going to have a green zone. The red zone means that when there's a warning come in, those people better get out. You'll see it up here, and it'll be posted. If we can't get people out, we know that we got about 6.5 hours if we have to go door to door and get people out. So we've been preparing on how long it would take us to get the people out of the red zone. So our buddy system is, we want everybody that is on the south side of the railroad tracks to find a buddy on the north side. know where they're doing, know where their contacts are, know where their home is, have a key, know where they're going, so if something happens and they're out of town, you can get to a buddy on the north side. Everybody knows everybody in Walsenburg. We can find a place to stay for 2 or 3 days. So our biggest emphasis right now is finding a buddy on the north side of town. When you do go to your buddy's house, we want you to take all your paperwork, all your prescriptions, and all your pets. The 3 Ps, okay? Everybody wants those, so let's get those packed away. Now, we, as a team, have put a kit together, a survival kit for 3 days. Costs about $127. That's including the radio, with enough food, water that you need for 3 days at a buddy's house. Okay? For the first 3 days, we can manage that. Okay? Like we say, companies like fish. After 3 days, it starts to stink. So we want to be prepared for the 3 days. So make sure that we have the food and the water. We can contain that water now. Everybody has milk jugs. Fill them up, put them underneath your sink, put them in your refrigerator. Have your water on supply. 1 gallon per day per person is what we recommend. So you know what you want, you know what you need. Make those packs. It takes about 4 or 5 hours to put everything together. That's including a sleeping bag, a tent, a radio, flashlight, whatever you may need to survive for 3 days. That's our biggest thing right now is the south side of town. Don't flee Walsenburg because the highways probably be shut down. Let's just flee the north side of Walsenburg. Pre-register. Pre-register on Fridays from 8 to 10 at the Warfano Community Center. Pre-register. Make sure that your supplies are within your building or within your car, so when we need you to get out, everything's already packed. Oh, I forgot, I'm at Safeway and I have to go down and pick it up. That might be too late. It doesn't hurt anything to throw your pack and supplies in the trunk of your car. So pre-register, put your packs together, and respond to the warning. We will have on our website, once the siren gets here and installed, we'll test it out, and we'll post when it's going to be a test, so we won't scare everybody. So that's what we're doing, how we're preparing for the flood. In the event of the flood, you know, we are going to sandbag the facilities that we need to sandbag. And we've installed our communication system, so us as city employees, the team can communicate with each other. And we've already had some trial runs, some preparations. We're meeting about 4 to 5 hours a week just on the flood. So we are preparing. Make sure that you register Code Red. I hate to repeat what everybody else is saying, but I kind of want to emphasize that we need to repeat because we need these things to happen. Code Red, okay? Watch the public notifications. You can go on the county website or the city website, and all the information will be there. We will be sending flyers in the building, so make sure you check the back of your bills after you get mad at what the water service charges are. Check the back. We will be putting that in the building and all the public notification that we can. I'd like to introduce you to the team at the end, so if you see one of our team members on the street and you have a question, ask them. Okay? We will have everything posted at City Hall. Come and visit us. We'll answer your questions to the best of our knowledge. If we don't have the answer, we will find it out through an expert. So as Mr. Burgosh says, yes, we are prepping for the sanitary sewer, so we don't have pressurized system. Yes, we are prepping for the raw water line to be washed through the Caceres River. Yes, we are preparing for the potable water line to be washed out on County Route 346. So yes, we are preparing. We also will have water on storage. If we run out of water, we will have water trucked into Walsenburg. So yes, we will have water services and we will have sewer services. I can't guarantee you how fast we're going to be up and running after the event happens. Nobody can. We don't know the severity of the event, but we know it's going to happen. During the event, we'll be monitoring the gauges, also the town of Walsenburg. We're prepared to barricade every street that's affected. We're prepared to assist in the sheriff's department on looting, trespassing. So we'll have personnel out. They will be devoted, the team will be devoted to the city of Walsenburg once this event happens. So we'll monitor, and then once the event has happened, we'll assess the damages, and then we'll get back to you. We'll meet and plan for the repairs. After the event happens, we know that we have contractors within a 90-mile radius that will come in and assist the city of Walsenburg in getting their system back up and running. And then we'll coordinate all work with other agencies. So just remember, we don't want you messing with the gas, we don't want you messing with electricity, and we don't want you messing with the water. When you get your warning, we want you to get out and be safe on the north side of Walsenburg. If you do have a place to flee in Pueblo, we don't know if I-25 is going to be shut down. We don't know if South I-25, we don't know where this is going to hit. So we're preparing for the south side of Walsenburg to buddy up on the north side of Walsenburg, and once the event passes, we can assess the damage and we don't lose anybody. So at the end of the presentation, if you have any questions, we'll direct it to our department heads. Okay? Thank you for attending. This is a great turnout.
Paul, come down here. So we know that we can't make the mountains recover right away. So the one thing that we're trying to do is to keep the water in the channel as much as possible. And if you'll take a look against this wall over here, you'll see a whole bunch of young people. Raise your hands. And there's you. And they're unique in two ways. One, they're young people in Huerfano County. That's unusual. But they have given up 3 months of their life to come and help us try to get through these floods. So give them a big hand.
Thank you, John. My name is Paul Branson. I work for Huerfano County right now. I am a supervisor, sawyer, and worker with this amazing group of American citizens from places other than this. What have we been doing? So what we're doing is we're basically taking our river corridor, the Cacharas primarily. We'll probably be working on other creeks like Middle Creek, South of Beta, and we are working to do what's called channel. Short is our rivers are really filled up with a lot of native stuff, branches, trees, snags, which are little dams from previous floods, a lot of human stuff, sheet metal, feed trays, feed buckets, trash, tires, wire, chain link, shopping carts, all kinds of things like that. We've been working since January 6th, I think, above primarily first the Levita Reach up on the golf course above the town of Levita. And we have basically cleared about a mile of nonstop willow, snags, and just a little bit of human stuff. Getting that river channel to stay where it is right now. Removing the snags allows us to keep that water where it is. We've had a number of sites where we've gone in there, and once things thawed out enough, we could chisel away on these things that, like what we thought was a beaver dam. It wasn't a beaver dam. It was a 15-foot feed trough, a couple sheets of corrugated tin, and it had raised the river height about 3 feet. We took that apart. And dropped that right back down to where it was. The river was already trying to go somewhere else. It was trying to go off to the side. So it'll go where there's least resistance. This was a relatively small situation. I mean, there's a 15-foot feed trough across about an 8-foot wide river. So we can do this at bridges. We can block up junk at bridges. We can block up junk at fences. We can block up junk on a whole bunch of small little trees that are down in the water or next to the water of our river. What we're working to do is to open all that up. A lot of sawing, a tremendous amount of hauling and chipping and burning where we can do that appropriately. These people are working harder than a lot of people I've seen in my entire life. The work is not rocket science. We ask that folks, if you have a river or creek near you, if you'd like some consultation about the simple things you can do to reboot your channel, it's really pretty easy. When you get done, it is beautiful. And the water just flows right down that river, right down that creek. You can walk along the side of it. Might be a good idea for trails, more trails. But what we need to do first is cut, trim, haul, get all that stuff out. Is it gonna work on the really, really big ones? No, but I know you're like me, and I know you're like a lot of folks that I live and work with. We're ready for that big stuff. We got a preventer, our check valves on our sewer. We got our family plans that we're working on. You know how long it takes to get all of your special stuff together? It takes a lot longer than you think, so go ahead and start now. And we have a lot of great systems in place. Well, we're working. It's going to be flowing a lot higher than you think. But we keep cleaning this thing up, it's going to flow right where it is, not jump over a road or jump over a bridge or jump over to your neighbor's property and go somewhere where it used to go 4,000 years ago or 100 years ago. So that's what we're working on. Reboot our river. We're kind of adopting our river course. We have the ability to take wonderful labor resources like AmeriCorps Team 6 coming up to help us out with some Sawyer work. We worked with United Methodists out of Levita. I know we're going to have a lot of volunteer group work parties and what have you. So if you're interested in that, please come and join us or contact us. Contact Natalie at the county if you want more information on those type of things. Right now, if you have river property, does anybody here live on the river, right on the water? We'd really encourage you, if you haven't done already, to sign our right to enter. Talk to us about what we can do there and cut down all the cottonwoods. No, it's really the small ratty stuff. It's a lot of the undergrowth and cleaning up all the driftwood. There's just junk everywhere. Some of you go up, probably going home on Bear Creek Road, and you can see the work that were started just west of the city of Walsenburg. Excuse me. That is some really hard to deal with vegetation, I'll tell you that. It's got about 100 thorns per tree, it's Russian olive. But we're working there and we're headed back. I guess we can go about a mile. So those wonderful people have said, yeah, come on in. We're cutting right alongside of the river. There's probably going to be bigger, dustier mechanical stuff coming after us, but this first shot does a lot of good things. If you have not called on us and had us come out to your site and looked at what we can do to help your river, please do. We cannot come down there and help you with our resources unless you sign that permission and met with us. Are already coming east into town from the bridge at Bear Creek, and we look forward to going all the way through on that scary map to the other side, and then all the way out past I-25. If you have any questions, I can be contacted either on site or through John at the county, and I'll be around later if anybody has any particular questions about the clearing and snagging work.
And I just have to say that all of the city crew and the county crew have really stepped up, and everybody's taken on more than does a regular job. So I really got to put a plug in for all the crews. Just a point on the pre-registration. So for the evacuation purposes, if you get a chance to look at this map, there's a zone A, B, and C. Is that right? And pre-registration is only for people in zones A and B. And that's evacuation registration so that we know. The last thing we want is something like they had in Paradise, California, where they had 2,000 people missing for like 3 or 4 days. We want to be able to account for people and know who we're looking for. So please, if you can, pre-register, and that's at the community center here in Walsenburg from 8 to 10 on Fridays during March.
And I'm going to ask the city manager to come up and say some closing remarks before we take questions.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone for attending. This is really, really pleasing for us to have everybody come out. I also want to thank the many federal, state, county agencies that have assisted the city of Walsenburg with not only the presentation tonight, but with the entire process of preparing us for a major flood event this spring. I also want to thank the mayor of our sister city, Doug Burgash, for his expertise and sharing that expertise with us, and someone else that I have begun working with, and it's been. We've worked in the last week on coordinating what the school system's doing with what we're doing. And Mr. Moore, would you come up and say a few words about what the plan for the school system is? You saved the best for last. I did. Or forgot about it. You know, the first part of superintendent is super, and that's what I consider you.
What a great guy.
Yeah.
I need you to run for, he should run for the Board of Education. Lot to add to what you've already learned this evening. It probably will not be as exciting as imagining a 100-year sewage backup, but it's still incredibly important because this deals with your kids. Nobody, we've not talked about kids. We talked about families, yes. What will we do in the event that this occurs while school is in session? Okay? I'll let you know. Number one, we'll close school immediately. Once I hear that siren, school's closed. Kids will go to the gymnasium. Okay? You may want to ask why. Well, the gymnasium will serve either John Mall High School, we'll keep that one, and Peakview Gymnasium. Those will serve as points of reunification with your children. Certainly y'all will want to get your kids, because we will not, in any circumstance, bus our children into any of those areas that will be prone to flooding, those identified areas, and even those a little more north, because nobody can say where that water's going exactly. I can imagine us having a bus run of children, perhaps to Gardner. If we get a clearance that 1 or 69 is fine, we'll take your kids home to Gardner. But under no circumstances will I put an employee, a bus driver, and or your children or grandchildren in harm's way. So know that if you do have children or grandchildren and you live in the flooding zone, the areas predicted, red, yellow, etc., then if you want to reunite with your child, you will have to pick them up at school. We're not going to dismiss them to any random person. What will you need? Those of you that have children have already been through this. We do disaster drills, evacuation, and we take all our kids down to the community center. You'll have to have the same type of information, a license. If we don't know who you are, sorry, you're not going to get your child. That's to protect the children. So you'll need a photo ID of some sort, and you'll have to fill out some paperwork. This will all be at tables in the gym before you're allowed to take your child home. So that's what I wanted to stress. We'll take care of your children for however long it takes. We hope you're able to get there to pick them up shortly after that siren blows. Reunification of families, extremely important. And the other item I wanted to mention is we'll do anything that we can to provide help. If it means using our school as a command center, as you saw occurred this with the fire, it just completely was taken over. You know, incredible. But we were there for them. We're there to help. We'll do the same in this situation, John. I've let you know, and everybody else too on the council. So please, let's follow the advice tonight that's been given by everybody. And I think the number one piece of advice was buddy up and buddy up now. Know who you'll go to and stay with. Unfortunately, I can't open up the gym because it could possibly be a command center. I've got kids in there, et cetera, waiting to go home as a shelter. I'm not going to do that at this point, anyhow. My main goal is getting all the kids home and safe. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Superintendent. One final thing. Just remember, we can't stop the water, and that's not our goal. What we can do is to give our community advice, advance notice, and warning to preserve life, to minimize the damage, and to assist with recovery. This is the first of several community meetings that we will have as we get more information available from all the agencies that we're working with. We will share that with you, and that might amount to monthly meetings, but we have to get through this together. We'll share information that we have. I think now we can entertain questions, and Mr. Harriman, can you bring up the team? And I'm very fortunate to have a wonderful team of supervisors and workers to work with me. And I wanted to introduce everyone. And we can entertain questions now. And it'll be to anyone you want to address questions to. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
If there's questions, the first team member, Joe Pacheco, he'll be taking care of potable water. Anybody has questions for potable water, Joe will be the one that will respond to potable water. Sanitary sewer treatment, David Royale. Dave? Water, Chris Beshaver. Sewer, Glenn Hillis. Street Department, Michael Brennan. Animal Control and Code would be Tim Kennedy. Art Ortiz for gas. So if you want, I'll bring them all up, and then we'll direct questions, and they can come to the mic and answer questions for you. Thank you. You guys want to come up? So we'll just kind of pick a question as we go around. Go ahead.
So, yeah, and we know that that's going to happen. We know that we could have floods back to back to back. I'm sorry. The question was how are we going to deal with the probability that this is not just a single occurrence? It could happen multiple times a year, multiple years, and we know that that's the case. And so over time, hopefully the landscape will heal and the risk will reduce. Be ready for false alarms. There's going to be false alarms. It's going to become part of your life. It'll be routine, and don't discount them. They're an alarm. Use them. It may not come to a flood, but don't be caught there because you got lazy, okay? And we will, over time, we're going to get federal dollars and state dollars and start making more improvements to help heal the land faster, okay?
if the Gomez Ditch area and a sanitary storm drain on West 7th Street, that system out there on the end of West 7th Street isn't connected to the city of Walsenburg. It doesn't belong to the city of Walsenburg. And the Gomez Ditch, if the flood comes, the Gomez Ditch is going to be history, because that's definitely right on the Caceres River. So, yes, it would. Yes. Sure, you can. Yeah, no.
Let me kind of address, if you don't mind, kind of the irrigation ditch scenario. And David is exactly right. You know, the flows are going to be such that we anticipate that most of the irrigation ditches on any of the reach that's flooded will be lost. We've already addressed that. We had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, excuse me, with all ditch owners, ditch water users, to look at that possibility. There's actually an engineering firm that has been engaged to give us the probability of what reaches will be most susceptible for losing irrigation ditches, irrigation water, and what can be done with that prospect. There's actually, we're developing some paper and paperwork now. But remember that this flood is just not your run-of-the-mill flood. It's going to be really catastrophic. And most of the structures, most of what we see as normal today will be lost in sections of the river. And so the Gomez Ditch will probably be lost. The Walsenburg Ditch that is at the west end of town that courses this way will be lost. What we're advising actually is all entities that have irrigation ditches or diversion structures, City of Walsenburg, Town of Levita, if the flood is imminent, they're advised to shut their structure, not to, you know, there's been some thought that, well, if we can pull water away from the river in a number of irrigation ditches, it'll help down below. Really what that does is kind of exasperate the situation. So if there's time, you know, we're not wanting to put anybody in jeopardy. Your life is worth more than a chunk of metal or a chunk of concrete. But if they have the time, we're advising everybody to shut their diversion structures because it'll really help contain damage that could be lateral to the main stem or the main rivers and streams. So that's what it is right now. And so we're working diligently with irrigation owners, structure owners, and so forth. Both, remember, this isn't just the Caceres River and the tributaries of the Caceres River, because there was such devastation on Pass Creek that anything down Pass Creek, which flows into the Warfano River just above Gardner, the probability is that if we get another major flood in Pass Creek, major rainstorm in Pass Creek, and if any of you have gone to Pass Creek, the damage up there was done by 1/2 inch of rain in 1,000 acres. If we get an inch or more, we're going to have some catastrophic floods coming down Pass Creek that's going to enter just above the Gardner area. And so the whole stream through of the Warfano River will probably lose structures, will probably lose dwellings and so forth on that too. So it's not just this area we have to look at. We're going to bifurcate the area, you know, depending on where the rainfall is, and we could have some really damage across a widespread area of the heart of the county. You know, agriculture is still a big mainstay in Warfano County. And we have a lot of families tied to that area and a lot of individuals tied to that area and living on those systems. So we're working diligently toward that from Division of Water Resource standpoint, Colorado Water Conservation Board. Thanks, David.
Okay.
I'm sorry, John, I have a question. Actually, it's not a question. I just wanted to say this. My name is Della Duran. I'm the former Warfano County coroner, and I've been out of business for a while, but I wanted to address the superintendent and some other people. In order to get our children, I think we need to also start preparing our residents for keeping their own identification, copies of their is to maybe in some way, John, you and the city administrator can work on helping people identify themselves and keep that identification with their buddies on the north side.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Della.
And I know we have a number of
Right.
people down there that are handicapped and elderly that would not be able to get out of there in an hour.
Okay, all right, thank you. Ma'am? Yes.
Alessi flood control. We're not anticipating the Alessi flood control to have any water. That's a small area. The Alessi should hold the runoff from that area. It's a flood control dam. We're not anticipating, unless Walsenburg gets a huge rain, this is more preparation for rains on the bird scar. No, no, no.
Larry?
For those of us who are in the floodplain area, are there any recommendations for our particular residents besides like the sewer backflows and things? I mean, sandbagging or caulking sealing, are there any recommendations or?
Number one, get flood insurance, number one, okay? And then, I mean, you probably need to talk to some individual protection providers. The NRCS may be able to help you. National Resource Conservation Service, they are Alpha Motel, they're by the Alpha. So.
Reading that when I did get flood insurance, the FEMA guidelines and stuff, they talk about, of course, we don't know if we're gonna have inches, I guess, or feet. I don't know what the worst case scenario you're looking at, but they're saying whether you cut off your electricity and don't turn it back on unless you have, you know, electrician. We don't have a lot of those things here. Does San Isabel come out, or what? Do we have any concerns about that or how to do it?
Definitely, if don't turn on any electricity, water, sewer, gas until it's been inspected and approved. So those were our recommendations. We can't tell you really what to do, but if you're not gonna go back into a flooded house unless it's been inspected. So that would be into code and proceed from there.
So we're gonna contact the city?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Larry, let me just answer Larry here. Remember, if you're evacuated, you're not going back in till you're allowed in. It's a one-way road out. So as soon as you're evacuated, when you leave, no one will be let back in until there's a systematic inspection of all structures. San Isabel has done the inspection for electricity, your gas department, and so forth. That's what these gentlemen are all here for. So, you know, evacuations are kind of a one-way. And don't expect to go out and, you know, and then come back in. Well, we'll go have lunch and come back in. You know, the real prospect is that depending on the severity of the flood, and we're going to have a lot of these, you know, we're going to have a lot of these false positives. How many times have we all been in the hills and it's pouring rain, and 30 seconds later the sun's shining? We just know that. And we know that all the indicators are going to say, this is the big one. This is a massive flood, and it just changes at the drop of a hat. And we don't have that, you know. And so we're going to, but if and when it occurs, and you have to leave your home, it's a one-way ticket out until you are advised that you can get back. Remember, no one here tonight has said the siren's going to sound when it's all clear. That's the difference between, you know, some other areas and what we're facing now. This is going to be another whole reentry program that will come into effect that everybody's still working on, because we're working on the front end, how to get people out safely. Now we have to work on the back end, how do we get people back in safely and integrated as quickly as possible. You know, you heard the complaints during the spring fire of people getting back in. That was nothing compared to trying to re-enter after a flood and all the contingencies that happened during that. So just bear that in mind about when you leave, be prepared, really. It may be 2 weeks before you ever see your home again.
In the balcony?
Okay, yeah. David, this is for the public works. I'm not sure which of you guys handled it, but, storm drainage ditch that runs down Hendron and then it goes into the storm drainage system, I believe. Kind of goes on the west side of the old Lynn the city has to go through all of these, the storm drains and make sure that there's no, debris in there that can back up.
We're mainly concerned on a flood event on the Caceres River.
Yeah, but I think you
So-
need to look upstream too, because like that, I actually have to carry flood insurance on my house. I'm almost a half a block away from Hendon because of that ditch. And if it does flood, I mean, if it has nowhere to go, it's going to flood up Cedar Street.
I'm on north side of Walsenburg, and I have flood insurance also. So, yeah, this event that we're preparing for right now, our concentration is on the Caceres.
Y'all haven't gone up there, so should
No.
we as private citizens go along and start picking up trash and crap out of that ditch?
We are attempting to put a volunteer committee together also, so you'll see more on the website about volunteers cleaning ditches. Yeah, it'll be on the website. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just wondering when you all anticipate putting this into the earliest date that you see this possibilities.
The timing?
How much time do we have now, and
So,
when you think the earliest?
the timing of what we see as the floods. So, and the mayor can correct me if I'm wrong, but our peak runoff is generally early June. With this burn and the ash on the snow, that's probably moving forward maybe as much as the second week in April, possibly. So, yeah. And, yeah, that's good.
So the question was asked when the flood season is and how early we could actually see flooding on the burn scar. So there's several scenarios with the weather. One is if we were to have rain on top of the snowpack, which would cause the snow and runoff all to happen at one time. So that's one. And then once we get into convective season, so that's thunderstorm season, could be as early as mid-April and go all the way through mid-late September. So remember the floods in 2013 were in September. Of course, another peak for us with flooding is always during the summer monsoon, about mid-July through about mid-September.
Mid-April would be something to shoot for.
Exactly. Yeah, and somebody else mentioned family preparedness. One thing that I talked about in numerous public meetings after Waldo is make sure your kids know what to do if they're home alone and you're at work or you're away. Make sure that they know what to do.
Yeah, one real question that has not been brought up is the fact of emergency services and triage area for medical purposes and things of that nature. The maps that were shown show that the road 160 was cut off just east of the Bear Spot in Bear Creek there. Accessibility to the hospital is going to be reduced dramatically, I think. And I'm just wondering, do we have a triage system in place or plan in place for people that could be injured? And like Doug said, this is going to be quite catastrophic. That along goes with that is injury and things of that nature. So what do we got on the plan there?
So we don't have, that I'm aware of, anything special in place. We know that if 160 gets cut off down there by the Bear Creek Bridge, that we will open the County Road 502, which goes through the golf course and through Lathrop State Park from Walsenburg to the hospital for limited access, not for general transportation purposes, but for limited access purposes, that road will be opened.
So would it be possible maybe, and it also depends on the amount of injuries and things that are going on,
Okay, we will, we'll make a note of that and look into that. Thank you.
Mr. Harriman had mentioned that as far as the buddy system, people on the north end of town, I guess my question would be for all the departments, does anybody anticipate how it will affect utilities for the people that are out of the flood zone?
So we're planning for the worst. So the north side of town will be in the safe zone, but we're not guaranteeing that you're going to have water, but you'll be out of the flood zone. So there may be water interruptions on the north side of town if we lose the transmission lines to the city of Walsenburg. Also, the north side of town will be out also, yes. We're telling to have a buddy on the north side of town, but everybody in the city of Walsenburg needs to prepare. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just want to go back to Mayor Burgosh's, just for some clarification. Do I understand correctly that those people, if we get a false alarm, which there probably will be several of them, that those people have to evacuate and they have to go through the re-entry process to get back home even during those false alarms?
So did everybody hear the question? Okay, so if there's a false alarm and there's no river flooding, no, you can go back home after the danger's over. But
There will be announcement made, obviously, that you can return to your houses.
Okay,
So
they won't
it
have to
will
go
always
through that
be,
re-entry
it will
process.
be, well, no, but it'll always be, the sheriff makes the call, in this case, always. He's the supreme commander in an emergency. Did I use too strong of a term? But, so if he says, thanks everybody, but the catastrophe did not develop, everybody can go back home, you can go back home. Remember, floods are going to be, and I hope everybody can hear me, but floods are going to be of different intensities. So it may be only a small section, may be a much broader area. It's his determination, it's his judgment that the safest way to re-enter will be. So it may be a lengthy period of time where he goes through everything very deliberately, or it may be a much smaller period of time, or it may be some re-entry is done and some is done in a different procedure. So
My second question is to those of us that live on the north side, when you're talking about the water lines and the sewer lines and everything, say you can install a backflow preventer at our own cost. Can somebody tell me what that is and what that does?
Sure, it blocks the sewer from going back into your house. The part generally costs about 60 or 70 bucks, plus a contractor to put it in for you. Mhm. Also, we have paperwork at City Hall if you visit us about all the situations of backflow water storage and where it would be. We're not going to try to cover everything tonight. So if you visit us or visit the website, you'll find all the information.
So wireless emergency alerts don't come directly from the National Weather Service. There are other apps that carry our warnings that we issue, but the wireless emergency alert is carried by your cell phone provider. And so like in Colorado Springs, there's a lot more cell phone towers with smaller coverage areas because there's a lot more people pinging those towers. Here in Werfenau County, there's fewer towers with a broader coverage area. So when we issue a flash flood warning for Werfenau County, it's gonna ping those towers in the county. Wireless emergency alerts are gonna be dependent on your cell phone provider. So that's why we recommend having more than one methodology. But if you're in Pueblo, you're not gonna get the warning for Werfenau County while you're in Pueblo, okay?
Except if it's children.
dispatch or sheriff's department here in the county, and you should sign up for that, and they will put your location of where you live in your phone, and you would get that while you're in Pueblo and you're away from home.
My question is kind of directed to Noah as well. Is it going to tell me if Beta Creek is flooding?
Well, I would listen for the wording of our warnings. We're trying to be very specific by having those 3 areas. When we issue a flash flood warning, no matter where it is, in Werfeno County, you may even get alerts for the eastern part of the county through NOAA Weather Radio, through an app process. For the wireless emergency alerts, you'd probably have to pull over and look at the wording of the warning to see which areas we're warning for. So when we issue a flash flood warning, it covers the debris flow, it covers just a regular flash flood. We're not going to differentiate, but how we're going to differentiate is in the wording of the warning. We will say a flash flood warning has been issued for such and such location in Werfeno County, and areas impacted will be near the spring fire burn scar, and whether it's La Vida, Walsenburg, some of these other areas. So that's why we're trying to be pretty specific in the wording. So look at the actual wording of the warning. You can get that from our website. You can get that from NOAA Weather Radio, multiple different ways. But those wireless emergency alerts are pretty short, and they'll tell you to get more information.
So does that mean that the state patrol or city highways are going to be shutting off 160 to warn us not to be crossing it?
I'll just speak from our interaction with Colorado State Patrol and CDOT. We had CDOT in our office today, and we're working with the Pueblo Traffic Management Center to have more coordination and more interaction. Also, when we issue a warning from our office, one of the first things we do is notify Colorado State Patrol through NAWAS, which is a direct line. So they should know those things. And then we're also monitoring information from the public and from media and things like that. So if we get word that roads are flooded, we might put that information in the wording of our warning and try and share that to a wider audience as well and just communicate that message. Well, we really don't interact much with the railroad, so. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so we're working with the BNSF to work out the warning system for them so that they can, if there is a flood coming, they can stop the train before the bridge or get it off the bridge or split the train or whatever they need to do. So we're working with BNSF on that. In the back here. Is on when we're going to get through the river. The city of Walsenburg has signed an agreement, I believe, with NRCS for about $2 million. The bulk of that money is specifically for river cleanup, river restoration in the Walsenburg city limits. So between Bear Creek Bridge and around Fiesta Park specifically, and that, the goal is to try to get that done as quickly as possible in the next 45, 60 days. Sir?
I have a formal comment and a question, but we have, buildings there. There's the city park. You've got an 8-foot rock wall that does a 90-degree there. And then it goes, that's just to the east and west. And then it does it to the north and south also, so halfway across the baseball diamond. Then you have a fence, pretty heavy-duty fence that has debris built up already from 1 and 2 feet deep. That's going to give you a 2-foot dam in there. Is there any remediation plan for that? Because on the video that we watched, if you watch over in the corner, you can actually see the fence and the wall and the water pattern going north and south rather than getting down into the lowland where the river channel is. So not only do we need to get water,
So that's county-owned property, the community center, the ball fields, and the fence, and then the 8 acres behind the fence to the east. And we have not looked at that yet, but we have engineering firm on board that's going to help us identify what things we need to do as a county in order to try to mitigate the floods and protect our property. Ma'am? If it's, the question was, can you go in and start cleaning the river? So the answer is, if you don't own it, you can't go on that property. If you do own it, sign a release, and we will help you with these wonderful people that we've got here. If you know who owns that property and can get permission from them, you're welcome to go do that. I would go to the assessor's office. Okay. We do not know what the damage is going to be past the extent, past basically Walsenburg Sand and Gravel is as far as they have done the inundation studies. So past that, we do not know. Bruce, you had a question? The question was, has there been an evaluation done to the risk of the people in Gardner? And yes, there has been some flow modeling done. And because Pass Creek widens out so much, so far, the flooding has not increased the flows in the Huerfano River. I mean, very, very minor. The community of Gardner itself is not at risk that we know of. Okay? Okay. I can't see up there.
The Army Corps of Engineers is available to do sandbag training at the request of the city. I did forward some information on there that can be done. They typically will do as many trainings as you want. They'll come for each training get a bunch of volunteers there. You will have to provide the shovels, you will have to provide the fill material, and have a project to do, so you have the people there and you get it done. The one thing to keep in mind with sandbags, though, is that most people, when they start looking down this path, they last for about one season unless they're protected. They have to be stacked the right way. If you just grab sandbags and do them without the training, they just float away or wash away. So really if you're in a place that's likely to be getting hit with floodwaters, what you ought to consider is getting a more expert look at that property, some kind of a consultant that does this work. For example, COCO on the website, co-co.org. They've been doing flood mitigation around Colorado for 17 years, and they work down here under the auspices of something called ARWIC, the Arkansas River Watershed Collaborative. But what you want to do is have something that's engineered to last, because like they've mentioned, we're in this for probably 10 years or more. Sandbags will last for a few months, and they have to be in place prior to the flood. It's not like the Mississippi River where you got a few weeks warning and you know the water's rising. If you don't have those sandbags down ahead of time, they're not doing you any good at all.
We're working on that, actually. We're going to try to set up some sandbags at the high school and fill material, and we're looking for a sandbag filling machine. And we may, if we can do it, we're going to try to do it maybe at the airport in Levita as well.
We're having that engineered right now to bury those 2 lines. Yep.
Nope. We're going to try. We don't have time to do that yet. Yeah, we've done quite a bit of work east of the Main Street Bridge already over the last 6 or 8 years. So that there's less work done that needs to be done there than you would think.
The question was, if we have, we know the propane tanks are going to be a problem, why isn't it mandatory that they be tied down? That's a good question. It would take an enactment of an ordinance by the city of Walsenburg to require that. Sure, that's understandable, and that's probably I'll take that actually back to the town board in Levita, and we'll consider that there too. You know, city of Walsenburg is in a little better prospectus than Levita. Levita is solely on propane, so if you have a house or a dwelling in Levita, chances are you have a propane. Here you have natural gas, so there's much less number of propane tanks here. But you know, we'll talk about that and consider that in Levita. You know, the entire kit, I think, was $119. Wasn't that what it was, Larry? Something like that. They're not real expensive, so we'll talk about that. Thank you.
Do I hear one more, sir?
Yeah. You showed some maps with the flow velocities and that, and also this map over in the corner. Are those available on the web?
Not yet, but is that possible, Carl? Can we get those?
Put on the city website as soon as tomorrow.
They may. We'll try to get them up tomorrow.
What about that map over there?
That'll be up. So they're working on that. They'll get that up on the website as well. So I just.
Okay, because I couldn't tell, you know, see which streets were which there.
Right. So they'll be up. Try to get them up tomorrow. Just want to remind you that this is the first meeting. we don't know everything. We're trying, we're learning. We've got a lot of experts to help us, and just stay tuned. You know, we're going to try to get another meeting put together in about a month. Is that right? Just somewhere around a month out. So we'll get the word out as soon as we know when that meeting is going to be. And, you know, thank everybody that's been working on this, and thank you guys. We didn't ask for this, but now we've got it.